Yeah, nice to meet all of you. I'd like to just get started telling you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Sweet Home, Oregon, on a family tree farm. Like many of you here are fully aware of what that does for young adults. It ignited in me passion of forestry, and I learned when I was in high school that there was a forestry program right down the road at Oregon State. And I actually got scholarships from Lynn County Small Woodlands Association, and all through 4 years of college they provided a scholarship for me. And then soon after I graduated, I got a job in forestry up in Washington State, and I was able to actually purchase part of my family's tree farm down in Sweet Home, 40 acres that I still own, and we're growing up to harvest someday and help provide for my kids. We get down there as often as we can, but I wish it was closer. I'm also we recently, about 3 years ago, bought 20 acres up in Alaska where we grow cattle, and and then I'm also a forest engineer for Rainier. I've been with Rainier for about 3 years now. They acquired Olympic Resource Management, and I was with ORM for about 5 years managing the Morton Tree Farm. So I learned about ag forestry early on in my career. I had a colleague that went through the program, and I saw what it did for him and kind of how it improved his skills, communication skills, and this was something that I was really interested in and wanted to be a part of. And a couple years ago, I felt like I was ready for the program, and I got buyout from the company I was working for, ORM, and applied for the program and got in. And this, so does anyone here not know what ag forestry is?
You might want to go through it.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure what the kind of knowledge on it was. And then also, is there any ag forestry alumni in the room? Awesome. So ag forestry, it's set up for agriculture and forestry professionals. Right now it's a 18-month program, and there's about 12 seminars across Washington State, as well as a week-long seminar in Washington, D.C., and also a international trip that lasts 2 weeks. And you're wondering why Puerto Rico is not international. I'll go on and tell you a little bit about why we ended up in Puerto Rico. So this presentation, I'm going to tell you about kind of the trip overview, kind of go day by day. Skipped a few days just because didn't want to put it all in here. It was pretty jam-packed. Going to go over some impacts and quotes from a couple of class members, and then so the class, throughout the program we raise money for different things. We got to buy a lot of gifts for speakers that come and talk to the class, and that actually adds up to a pretty big expense. So that we do different fundraisers throughout the program, and then any money that's left over, the classes usually donate it to a cause that they find on their trip. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then any questions at the end. This is Puerto Rico. So obviously it's territory of the U.S. It's not international. So our class was originally scheduled to travel to Ecuador. That trip was canceled twice due to COVID, and this was the last resort that if we were going to go on a trip, it had to be somewhere in the U.S., and this is as close as we're going to get to international. So Puerto Rico is actually quite large, and it's quite populated. So the capital, San Juan, that's where the international airport is, and it's a pretty big city, probably comparable to Portland. This kind of marks what we did or the areas we went to. So we pretty much circled the whole island. We traveled up into this mountainous terrain, spent a night up here, and then also a night over here. Traveled all the way around, caught a ferry out to Culebra, which is a small island, and then went back and circled back around to San Juan. Puerto Rico is pretty similar to like Washington State. There's a big mountain terrain that splits it east to west, and you have a very dry climate on the south, similar to eastern Washington, and then wet climate to the north. So yeah, we went all the way around up into the mountains for several nights, which is very steep, rugged terrain, and then came all the way around up to the island there. So getting into kind of our itinerary, our first day was in San Juan, which is the capital, and we spent some time in Old San Juan. It's a very old city. I believe it was like the 1600s. It was established. There was a lot of trade coming in from Europe and Africa. So Puerto Rico was kind of a melting pot for culture. You had a lot of African influence, a lot of Spanish influence. So there's very diverse background of people there. And I'm a big fan of Teddy Roosevelt, and this is thought to be his work here. It's a wall on the outskirts of the city, and so I thought that was pretty cool that he probably signed it, because he was there at that era when they think that was scratched into the wall there. So day 3, we spent first half of the day at U.S. Forest Service, which Puerto Rico has our only tropical national forest. And I'll go on to, we spent a day in that national forest, so I'll talk about that in a couple slides. But this day we were just in the U.S. Forest Service office, and we actually met with one of our tour guides there. He was a Forest Service employee. He spent pretty much the whole trip riding around with us on the island, and so he was pretty critical and kind of showing us the local spots and good food, and able to do a lot of communicating for us. It is a Spanish-speaking mainland country. And then we visited this Puerto Rico hardwoods. So it was a local artisanal guy that had a sawmill, and Puerto Rico is actually one of the only areas where you can get mahogany that's sustainably sourced. And that's what you see here. These are mahogany slabs that he sawed. And pretty much all the wood that he's sawing came from Hurricane Maria. And he sat down with us for about an hour and told us when the hurricane hit the island, it totally devastated it. And the U.S. government brought in a contractor to clean it up, and they were grinding thousands and thousands of tons of beautiful mahogany wood and just chipping it, and it was pretty awful. He was in tears telling us this story of how this beautiful hardwood was just getting chipped up and put into a landfill. So he was actually running around with a small trailer, pretty much stealing mahogany logs off the side of the road and bringing them back to this yard that he has. And there's still logs there from Hurricane Maria back in 2017 that he has plans for. So day 4, we visited Parcha farm, which Parcha is passion fruit. That's what you see here. They had it kind of terraced down these slopes, and this was a ripe one that we got to pass around and eat, and it's very tart, flavorful fruit, and it's just kind of slimy but really good. And this is a product that he produces. It's passion fruit pulp, and he actually gave us a whole case of that, and it ended up being our drink of choice was the local Medea beer with Parcha fruit mixed in it. And then we actually found out that they actually brew it's called Passiflora, and it's the best beer I've ever had. Then we also visited a couple other farms and a community forest. There was a community that got together, it was going to get developed, and they were able to purchase, I think it's like 40 or 50 acres of a watershed and preserve that for a community forest. Day 5, we kind of were working around towards the southern part of the island, and there's some historical salt flats. And this picture is ADS pipe. I deal a lot with that, so I thought that was kind of neat seeing that down there. But yeah, this is a salt that they bring in seawater to these big flats, and then it naturally evaporates and left with pure salt, and you can pick it up and eat it. A lot of the agriculture farmers, they go and collect this for cattle, for salt supplements. And this is one of the lighthouse near there that we visited. Very beautiful scenery looking out over the ocean. This is probably my favorite stop that we had. Think of me, Gianna. So this guy, I don't remember his name, but he has a farm up in these mountains, and you can see how rugged this terrain is. All of these ridges, there's just fine ridges everywhere you look, and there's a road on every one of them, and there's houses all along them, and it's amazing how populated this area is. And this gentleman has this farm up there, and every Sunday he invites the whole community out to his farm. They set up food stands. He gives tours through his farm. He also sells a lot of product during these events. This is some roasted coffee beans that he had, and it was probably 10-foot long screen that, a couple inches deep, and it was, I think, about $4,000 worth of coffee beans. And this is actually one of the gifts that we would give to our speakers. It's a jar of honey from Washington State. That was a pretty popular thing that we were giving out down there. People thought that was pretty neat, and we gave that throughout the program as well. This is coffee beans on the tree. That was the best avocado I've ever eaten. And then the Puerto Rican flag. I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute, but everywhere you look, you see this flag. So, like I said, El Yunque is the only tropical national forest in the U.S. Forest Service system. They have a very beautiful building there for tourists to kind of learn about the national forest. This is a really cool three-dimensional map that they had. You can see it right there. This is the perimeter of the national forest. It's obviously very steep, rugged terrain there. This picture right here was taken at the top of this tower, and you see here this really cool pool. This was actually built by the CCC. There was a lot of that that went on down there. We've seen the signs of the CCC, a lot of the areas we went. Very beautiful rock work. I didn't know that there was anywhere in that area, so that was pretty cool to see. Grew up a lot around the national forest where I lived, and I have used those things quite a bit, so pretty cool to see. And this was actually built as a swimming pool for those workers when they were there. Geological survey, I always try and take a picture of those when I see them out traveling. So day 13, getting towards the end of our trip, we toured a artisanal rum distillery. So Bacardi rum is actually in Puerto Rico in San Juan. We were going to tour that originally, but due to COVID, we couldn't tour that. So we actually got into this, and I think it was quite a bit cooler because a little more personal. This is a still that they had there. Obviously, they had a big room full of barrels, and then this is a Columbine. a little older than what we see today in a lot of our agriculture, but they were making all their rum out of sugar cane, and this is what they're using to harvest it. I think it was from the 80s is what they said. And then we had a connection through, there was a Egg Forestry alumni that got, he's moved quite high up into the Army Corps of Engineer, and he was able to give us a tour, or get us a tour and meet with some folks down there. It was very eye-opening. You can see this, it doesn't show it, but this Link Belt 300 was pretty wore out. That's one issue they have down there is contractors with equipment that, you know, it's not like what we have here. If you go to a Corps of Engineer job, it's usually going to be pretty darn nice machinery. So they were digging out, there's a canal that runs through San Juan, and over the years it had gotten, it was their garbage dump, and it's gotten to the point where it's almost, there's no water running through the natural canal. So they were going through, and there's also houses that have been, shanties that have been built all along the canal. So they were going through and trying to restore that canal back to somewhat of a original state. But just the, you know, looking at some of this stuff, it wouldn't fly here in the U.S. and was kind of like, we're still in the U.S. Why do they have different standards down there? Yeah, just pretty ugly stuff. So just wanted to read a couple quotes. So this one's mine. We were asked to, when we got back from our trip, to write a paragraph about what we saw, how it impacted us. So I'll just read this. The most impactful part of the trip for me was the people of Puerto Rico. The last 5 years in Puerto Rico have been hell. It started in 2017. They had 2 hurricanes hit the island within 2 weeks of each other. One of those was Hurricane Maria, which sat over the island for nearly 24 hours and left much of the island without power and basic amenities for up to a year. In January of 2020, they were hit by a 5.8 magnitude earthquake followed by 6.4 the next day. Soon after the earthquake, COVID-19 showed up. It was inspiring to hear the stories of resilience and see the pride the Puerto Rican people have for their culture, history, and their country. And everywhere you looked, there was the Puerto Rican flag flying or painted on a mural. So this is just this is probably my favorite one that we saw, but you can see that it's the side of a building, and it's probably 16 feet tall. And just there was a town that we visited, I don't remember the name, but it was known for the artists painting the murals on the streets, and the whole town was just covered in these. And that wasn't just that town, it was just much of the island. Everywhere we went, we'd see these murals, and you know, a lot of them incorporated the Puerto Rican flag. And yeah, it was just amazing artists and something you don't see here. Amanda Sandhoff, she's a warehouser employee. I'm still in awe of how beautiful every single place was. Puerto Ricans have so much pride in their towns and their history. Their narrative is painted on every free wall. They are not ashamed of their past, colonialism, or their heritage, but instead embrace and learn from it. I enjoy learning about the culture and how they're changing the future. Jason Walders, another warehouser employee. One thing that stuck me over and over during our time in Puerto Rico was the pride that the people there have in their country, their culture, and their identity. Almost everyone that we met with to a person conveyed this, sharing stories of famous Puerto Ricans and their accomplishments, bragging about their home, and sharing the basic idea that they would never want to live anywhere else. This was so striking because Puerto Ricans struggled with so many challenges: poverty, natural disasters like Hurricane Maria and recent earthquakes, natural resource issues, trade issues, food insecurity. Yet through all that, the people there persist. It was truly inspiring. I took the photo below on the first morning of our trip in Puerto Rico, and for me, its significance only became clear after understanding what I outlined above. So we didn't collaborate on writing these, and you can see the similarity. The people there made an impact on all of us. Like I said, they've been through hell in the last 5 years, and prior to that, they've been colonized. You know, they don't have the same rights as we do, on the mainland of the U.S. And they get up and put a smile on their face, every one of them. And we didn't meet a person that really had anything bad to say. So yeah, people were very inspiring there. So like I said, our class, we donated $1,200 plus a $1,000 matching donation that the Locks provided to the class. So we donated to this organization. It's Siempre Vivas. One of the class members, or we were asked prior to the trip to do some research on Puerto Rico, and you know, if there was anything that we wanted to learn about while we were there, we had the opportunity to share that with our program director. So there was one class member that researched that there's a lot of domestic violence that happens in Puerto Rico, and so she said she wanted to learn more about that, and we were able to meet with the person that founded this organization and one of the people that she works with. So we met with them at dinner in one of the towns. They shared some powerful stories about gender violence in Puerto Rico, as well as what their organization is doing to change the future. They provide support service to people trying to leave abusive relationships, and they also provide support services for children that come from abusive homes in order to try to break the cycle. Siempre Vivas is a local grassroots organization, and our class money would make a meaningful difference. When we gave them this money, it was pretty evident that they do not receive a lot of larger donations like this. And yeah, $1,000, $2,000 isn't that much money, but to them it was a lot. So I'm very confident that that money was put to very good use. So these facts here: Puerto Rico has the highest per capita rate of women murdered by their partner in the world. It was estimated that more than 60 women were murdered in 2020 by their partners. And throughout our trip, talking to different people that joined us, just talking to them about why that's an issue, it became very clear that it's a problem that many Puerto Ricans face, and it's hard to get out of that situation. So I kind of just wanted to end with this slide. Like I said earlier, the art was something I wasn't expecting. I don't think any of us was. I've never seen art like this before. I don't pursue art. I don't go to art galleries, but seeing it everywhere you went, walking down the street, walking out towards the beach. This was actually an old railroad, and there's a tunnel right here. There used to be a railroad that went around the island. And then the food was pretty cool. Like I said, there's a lot of diverse cultures that kind of all converge in Puerto Rico. This is one of their main dishes called mofongo, and it was served several different ways. This was kind of made from plantain and some other root vegetables, like a bowl, and then it either had chicken or sometimes it had soup, or it was served more like as a dessert just by itself. There's a famous road in Puerto Rico. It's called like the Street of Pork, but there's like 10 of these stands along the highway that cook whole pigs on rotisseries. So we did that one day and had blood sausage, pork on the rotisserie there. So pretty interesting food. This is just a fancy dish that was really good. I also ate goat for the first time down there. It was in a stew, and it was probably the best meat I've ever eaten. But yeah, I just wanted to end that, kind of highlight the things and stuff that we ate.